We did it. We're live. Cool. I don't like starting this stream. This is like the hardest stream that I have to start. There's like the most buttons I need to click in the right order in order for things to work. But we're live, and that's what matters. Welcome to Story Mode. This is the 20th episode now. There's now another 2 in the number. That doesn't mean anything. Anyways, so I'll just make this real quick. If you haven't seen Story Mode before, it's essentially a book club style podcast. We're just going to sit here and we're going to talk about a game that we played over the last month. This time we will be talking about a game called Black the Fall. If you have not played Black the Fall, not a lot of people have, so it's kind of a 2D side-scrolling thing. If you're curious about the game, type in ! story game, and then that should give you a Steam link. And real quick, I'm just gonna state that this is spoiler heavy, so we're just gonna talk about everything. So, yeah. So if you care about spoilers, shut your ears. You've been warned. Co-hosts are Lewis. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. So, hi. Yeah, I'm Lewis. I'm also known as LRFLEW. I'm also the guy that's really terrible at these intros.
Hey, you're good at everything else, so we keep you around. And my other lovely co-host, Eggman. How you doing today, sir? Friend, person. Hi. What's up?
Doing pretty good. My internet has seen better days, though, so we're gonna hold on tight and hope we can get through it.
So we're just gonna be sitting here clenching and hope that you don't randomly vanish from us, because that would be unfortunate. And our lovely guest host, Uthris. How you doing today, sir? Who are you, and what do you do on the internet?
What do I do on the internet? Apparently, I make parking lots here on YouTube, not Twitch, because apparently I don't have any traction here. But I just make some YouTube videos, creative gaming, and all that fun stuff.
Cool. If you haven't seen the show before, to anybody out here, usually the format, we're going to go for about 45 minutes to an hour. That's what we aim for anyway. Sometimes we go over, sometimes we're under. And then afterwards, we're just going to switch to Twitch IRL and talk shit for an hour or so, assuming Eggman's internet holds together and doesn't spontaneously combust. And, yeah. So, let's get started. First off, let's just roll down with everybody's impressions of the game. Let's start off with our guest host. What do you think, just like kind of overall, of Black the Fall?
Well, the overall package, I think it's a good art style. The gameplay is average, and I would say the puzzles are average. It's generally, I think overall, as a package, it's just an average platform puzzle game.
Solid 2.5 out of 5. It is what you get, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the price point's fine on it too. It's relatively short, and it's just pretty straightforward kind of gameplay.
Fair. Let's roll up to Lewis, and we'll go to Eggman next. What do you think, just overall?
I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted on the game.
Me too.
Yeah. It's like I liked it when it was fun, but at the same time, there was a lot of times where it was more frustrating than fun.
Yeah.
And those weren't fun.
I just kind of want to get everybody's like general mood about this game before we like really start talking. So, and Eggman, what do you think?
I actually thought it was pretty good. I mean, there were mistakes that I made, which we'll go over, but it heavily reminded me of games that we've covered before, like Inside, especially 2.5D puzzle platformer, and so I tend to have an affinity for those types of games because they're not bogged down with like 24 mechanics that you're trying to keep track of, which is more easy to parse for me and is conducive to a better story game.
Yeah, and they're a little bit more complex than the press W to move forward walking simulator style of things, right?
Yeah.
Well, my general impressions were, shall I say, conflicted. I've played a lot of games like this. I think where the game really broke for me was the controls felt a little floppy at times. The physics also felt a little weird. There's a few spots where you have to jump really precisely with controls that aren't particularly precise, which was fun. overall, I think I enjoyed my experience with the game. I think the biggest problem that I have is that I've played Oddworld. Oddworld is a very similar style of game. By that, I mean it's... let me just describe the structure of this game. So there's maybe a little bit of platforming, puzzle, maybe a little bit of platforming, puzzle, maybe a little bit of platforming, puzzle, ambient story stuff in the background, atmosphere. And that is Oddworld.
Well, it's worth pointing out that the puzzles are usually platforming puzzles. So you have to figure out where you need to go to do a certain thing.
Yeah, so you have to get to the far right of the screen eventually, somehow, and there's probably fire in between you and the far right.
Yeah.
Interesting choice of words there.
It's, as this is a story podcast, it's probably instructive to say that the puzzles weren't really the medium through which the story was relayed. It was mostly the in-between parts of the puzzle and the kind of ambient clues that you got. And so it's probably worth saying that this is a game that's heavily themed after communist Russia. And it apparently takes place in 1989. So it's like a post-World War II alternative history / future.
This game goes to Wolfenstein.
I should interrupt because you're actually close, but quite a bit off base. USSR, yes. Russia, no. I ended up actually Romania, looking at all the context clues. It's actually the Romanian Revolution.
It's kind of interesting because the developers are from Romania, and a lot of them remember the revolution. So it's actually kind of interesting listening to them talk about the game and why they made it. It's kind of has made me like a game that I probably would have been kind of sour on. It made me like it more because of the almost documentary-ish approach that they took to parts of it, or like, alternative history approach they took to it,
Yeah, it is Romania, but the symbolism in the game, you get the scythe and hammer of the Communist Party, which in the USSR, that was their symbol. And then in certain parts of the game, you see pictures of Stalin, Lenin, Marx, and one other person I think is Khrushchev, not sure. So those are all figures that in World War II were heavily associated with Communist Russia / USSR.
Yeah. So the game starts off kind of in one style, and then it becomes a different game, and then it goes back to another game, to the style number one. And I think that this is important to mention because it starts off in a very... I know Uthris said you didn't play... you haven't played any of Playdead's games, correct?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be referencing a lot of a game called Inside real quick. The early little bits of Black the Fall, that kind of opening sequence when you wake up and everything is powered by bicycles for some reason, and there's the big hulky security guards. Actually, I'm just curious, in the opening section, did any of you guys find the secret, the two little secrets in that opening area?
There's a lot of secrets in the game. You're probably going to need to be more specific.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just curious if you found those two, because they were just particularly interesting. There's like a bunch of guys like sitting watching VHSs, and you get achievements for every single one of the secret areas, and I'm kind of sad I didn't find all of them because...
Well, don't worry. One of the achievements requires you to ride a bicycle for 15 real-world minutes.
Is that the countdown thing at the beginning?
Yep.
Did you...
I was like...
Hang on.
I looked up a guide.
I was going to say, did you 100% it?
No, I'm not going to 100% it.
Oh. Is it dumb to 100%? Do they have like a don't die achievement?
I don't think so, but I mean, I just read the one where it was like, hold X for 15 minutes. And I was like, no, thank you.
Well, that's when you get a wait and you go get like a drink and some food.
No, that's when you invert your keyboard controls. Like, you can do that. And then just like leave. Done. Interesting. Well, anyways, so it starts off in like a very kind of cinematic, like camera panning around and kind of beautiful atmospheric game. And then it becomes the puzzle game that we talked about a little later, with this one excruciatingly hard auto-scrolling almost platforming sequence in the middle, which is weird and out of place.
Are you talking about the underground sequence?
When you're escaping from the facility.
Yeah.
Like before
that was
you
the one
outside.
you found really hard.
Isn't that the whole game though? Escaping the facility?
No, but like that one sequence is just excruciatingly badly designed.
You're talking about the one after you accidentally activate the ats and before you get outside.
Yes. And like the background goes black, and then like you're kind of running around the pillar and going down and getting out and cat and
yeah.
My cat won't shut up.
I don't think I died there at all.
I died a bunch.
I thought that was honestly one of the. It was a very intuitive piece of platforming for me. Like once I kind of got the hang of what they wanted me to do in that section, it was very straightforward, and I enjoyed it actually. Because I know that you said there was one spot that frustrated you, and I was trying to guess which spot it was.
Well, it was that plus one puzzle, which we can talk about a little bit later. But I think, like,
for me, I think the frustrating part for me was Act 3, so pretty much right when you head outside for good ways.
I'll just say what bugged me. It was the boat puzzle. The one where you have to like get the boat across the one screen.
The paddle wheel boat?
No, not the paddle, not the big boat.
Are you talking about the raft, the thing that
The
you jump
tiny-
onto and it falls down in the river and you have to get across?
Yeah, that one.
I
the
played
big
through
boat
this
was
game
fine.
twice, and that was the only one that caused me to die like a dozen times, literally. Because the margin for error there is so slim.
Are you talking about the one where the screen like moves, or the one where it doesn't move?
The one where it doesn't move and you have to use
that
your
one.
dog to get across.
Yeah. How did you die? I don't think I died there once, but I had to try like 8 times. Maybe more.
If you don't time it just right so that you get enough momentum to make it to the other side, it looks like you can make it and then you can't.
Huh. Okay.
It's worth noting that we're talking about boats. This game follows the Assassin's Creed principle of main character is water soluble, but nothing else is. So worth mentioning, you die when you hit the water.
And the robot dog that can swim somehow.
The robot dog could do anything. He could.
The robot dog is the best part of that game, man.
Yeah, the robot spider dog.
Like, you want to know how I got sold on this game? I was in Unsanity Live's chat, and he knows how much I like Playdead games. And he's just like, Blind, have you seen this game called Black the Fall? And I was like, what? And he's like, it looks like Inside, but in communist Romania, and you have a robot dog and there's mechs. And I'm like, okay, I'm sold. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Where do I go? But yeah, I think most of the like early, like the majority of the storytelling is in the indoor sequence at the beginning and the end sequence. So let's just kind of break down like what they're trying to say with that opening area, or at least what I think they're trying to say, which is just communism sucks. Mostly, it does a pretty good job, I think. Like there isn't that much we can talk about here. This is a hard one, I think.
Yeah, like when I was going through the game, I was like, okay, I'm really trying to concentrate on the background and all these context clues. I'm like, okay, communism's bad. What are we talking about? Oh, we're in an alternate future. And then I didn't really get it.
And then the game ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Well, it's about as generic as you can get when you're talking about just communism sucking, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look, people are enslaved. Oh, now you are trying to escape the compound. And then you do. Like, that's about it.
And then you get caught, and then you pilot giant mech, knock door down, overthrow the government, and then die.
Pretty much.
And then baby pictures of developers, which is like a running trend in games that we've played, which I think is kind of adorable. I think that I really like it when games try and tackle tough topics. I think we've hit a number so far, like between What Remains of Edith Finch and like Evangeline. We've played a number of games now that hit rough topics, but do a pretty decent job of communicating them. And just like atmospherically, it's they, as Uthris said, it's pretty generic, but at the same time, I feel like,
this game seemed kind of interesting in terms of its storytelling, because it seemed less interested in telling you a story and more interested in getting you interested enough to research the story yourself. Like the fact that the game ends with photos from the actual event, partially colorized, was clearly a way of saying, hey, this is based off of real life event. Go Google what that blue, yellow, red flag with the hole in the middle means. You know, go to Google. Figure this out yourself. We're not going to hold your hands here.
Not all of the pictures were from that event. Some of them were from further in the past. But yeah, they were all of protests or revolts or wars of some kind, basically.
I almost feel like you could give this game to a history class as homework. Like almost.
You could. I don't know if it'd be terribly informative.
Keep people interested. Yeah. Probably longer than reading a textbook. No,
there's a few. We're kind of a little bit light on story, but there's a few things that I wanted to bring up about the good design that I saw in the game. I noticed early on that I really enjoyed the sound design. Like, it was very good, and especially with the puzzle where it indicates to you that you should probably use headphones for. I tried it once without headphones, and I was like, "Oh man, this is gonna be tough." And then I put on headphones and was able to get it first try, which is a sign that they did it in a way that is intuitive.
Yeah.
There's also the silhouette trap where a shadow comes down in front of you and you're like, oh shit, there's a wall. And then something comes from behind you and then you're like, oh no, what do I do? And it turns out the wall is just a shadow and you can keep running.
That vision puzzle was really interesting, the audio one.
And that's something you can't do in a 3D game because you'd just be like, oh, there's a shadow on the wall next to me. So it's something that you can uniquely do in this style of game, which is something that they should be doing if they're going to make a game this way.
Yeah.
I'll
mention the audio puzzle that I didn't actually use headphones for that one because the surround sound I have in our living room is good enough that I was able to do it without it.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Because the audio puzzle, for anybody who didn't play the game, it's essentially like you're in a black room and there's like these things like coming out of the wall that kill you, and they make a very
steam jets.
Yeah, they're jets of steam. I couldn't remember if they're fire or not, but I was like, it's not fire. What am I thinking here? There's these jets of steam that kill you immediately. Which is kind of brutal if you
everything kills you immediately in this game.
Yeah, this is a one-shot dead game. I kind of wish that. Anyways, I'll mention that later. So like steam jets just like immediately kill you. And you can hear them because they're really loud, but you're like in a black room and you hear tss, and you have to like avoid them as they make the noise. And that was a really cool puzzle. I agree.
I mean, I like that. And then also like going back a little bit to how the lighting played in the game, which I thought was very good. I mean, the art direction, in my opinion, was the best thing about the whole game. And the area where you're running away from like the flamethrower that's chasing you, and then the shadow is covering up where you're supposed to jump and land, and it looks like those are the pits rather than the jumping points. I think I died like 4 times because I just kept forgetting they were there, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like a memory puzzle game.
Yeah.
A little bit there, which was interesting. And then you just like fall straight into like death spikes, which is always fun.
But like I like the difference between that, in which case that's kind of a user kind of failure, and I respect those type of puzzles more so than poorly explained puzzles, which there are in this game. Where you're just like, I don't know what to do, like at all in this case. And those are the reasons why, like for me, it's kind of a 50-50 kind of overall gameplay.
Can I mention one specific puzzle that was really unintuitive and annoyed me? Because in Act 3, you have to get past I'm just going to call it an AT-AT because that's what it looks like. It looks like a Star Wars.
Oh, an AT-AT, okay. You're one of those, never mind.
From Star Wars.
Yeah.
Just And you have to get past one of those, and you notice these crows that are hiding in the bushes. So you send your dog ahead to scare out the crows, which causes the thing to start shooting at it instead of you, so you can run ahead. But eventually you get to a blue platform, and you realize that if you send the dog ahead to scare the crows, he tilts this kind of seesaw platform. You get shoved up, you're dead, rip. And so what you're supposed to do is send the dog backwards to the previous set of crows to scare them. But if you stand right behind the cover, that area is not visible. You can't actually send the dog over there. You have to like move it weirdly to the side. You have to move like just to the very edge of the platform so that that area is just barely visible to do it. Like the camera doesn't really make it obvious that that's even an option unless you like know to look for it.
Yeah, I ran into the same problem, and I think another problem with that was you couldn't see the crows landing again. So you didn't know they were even there the second time around.
Yeah. I solved that puzzle by mistake. I'm not sure how, but I did. I was just kind of like stumbling around going like, what do I do? And chat was yelling at me that they're like, there's crows. And I was like, what crows? And then I just got past it. And I was like,
See.
Okay.
Hilariously, this puzzle that I solved by mistake was the one that Blind had the most trouble with, which was the paddle boat, where you had to like hang on the bars and so you wouldn't get noticed by the security cameras. I was just kind of like mashing buttons, and I happened to be pressing E, and so I just like jumped up onto the bar and just hung there like exactly as the camera came, and I'm like, oh. And then I ended up dying once, and it teleported me like forward, so I only had to do one more.
Well, like it's fun. It's funny about that paddle boat one is you can actually just stay crouched behind the command console through it all except for one time.
Yeah,
you don't even have to grab the
entire time.
I mean, that's not actually the puzzle that I was referring to. The one that I had trouble with. The one that I was having trouble with was the one where you need to like jump down onto a floating platform and then it kind of floats. But the problem that I had was I could never get the physics to actually make me go far enough. So I would always float like. Maybe
You're
like
supposed to jump on with the dog to get enough.
I was, or maybe I had the timing off like just slightly, but I was always like just barely making it and then dying, and that was excruciating.
I actually like that puzzle,
but nah, whatever.
I thought it was clever, but the problem was the margin for error was too slim. That I would do a thing where I'd jump. And then I'd have the dog jump like immediately after, and sometimes he would swim, sometimes he would jump, and then if he jumped, usually the boat would stop just out of reach, and it was so frustrating just to get the timing right on that one.
Yeah, it's like very.
And then if you fail and you don't happen to die, you have to get your dog to jump from one end to the other and back and forth till you slowly get pushed back so you can try again. It was really annoying.
Well, on that one, I think I tried so many times, trying again and again, that I got really good at going the opposite direction. Yeah. Like I could get that thing across in about 5 seconds and then reset. But the fact that that's what we had to do was the annoying part, for sure.
And now that I'm thinking about it, there was another puzzle that drove me up the wall. It actually made me like quit out the game and then come back and beat it the next day. There's a puzzle where there's a flat platform that almost looks like a teeter-totter, and you have steam underneath it, and you can push the steam back and forth using a lever or like a little wheel thingy that you spin, and then it lifts it. I didn't realize I could actually jump onto that platform.
Oh.
That was not the problem I had with that puzzle, but I also seriously hate that puzzle.
This game has a problem that I think a lot of 2.5D games suffer from, and that's perspective. Most of the time it's fine, but when it screws up real bad, and you'll just look at it and you'll be like, do I get up? What?
Also, when you set the dog to be box mode so you can climb up on it, it's sometimes not in the same plane as you and you just can't get on it, which that should never be possible, really.
I never had that issue because if it was slightly out of plane, it would usually push itself into plane. But I mean, one thing that's worth noting about that whole perspective thing is that the game is sort of 2.5D, but it also isn't, because there's actually a lot of 3D elements to it. One being that robot dog we're talking about. You can control him in 3D. You can push him to the background and the foreground. And the path that you take moves through 3D. So there's a lot of times where your character will make right turns on his own. Yeah. So it's sort of like an on-rails 2D thing, but it's within a 3D space, so it's not always intuitive where it's going to go.
I mean,
for me, those are the moments where I think the game succeeds the best. There's a few in between moments where it's solely like platforming, and you're moving through this world kind of in a rapid pace and just jumping and jumping and jumping, kind of like up through the pipes and things. And that is kind of, for me, the best part of the game play itself. I don't know if anyone agrees with that, but
I mean, I like that section. I don't know if I'd agree that was the best, but I can say that was at least a really fun part, just kind of being able to move through all that and not get stuck by obnoxious puzzles.
I think let's do this. What was everybody's favorite portion of the game? Because for me, I think the most interesting part of the game is once you're kind of through that outdoor daytime area. Also, just to mention, when you first escape from the facility at the beginning, which is, I think, a power plant where everybody's powering the world with bicycles for whatever reason. When you escape from that facility, the world is war-torn, like destroyed. And there's a lot of really maybe not a huge amount, but there's a little bit of interesting like visual storytelling going on out there, even if it's not an overarching arc of story per se. But there's like there's a blown out church at one point that you walk through, and there's people praying. There's a house with a dude watching television in the background. There's a mech walking around in the background looking for you the entire time. So it almost has like this kind of sense of urgency the entire time you're running through that section, which is very interesting. But I think my favorite portion of the game is right at the very, like close to the end. There's a sequence where you have to get onto a bus at a bus stop, which I think is really interesting because you essentially need to like, everybody has like these almost mind control boxes on their heads, kind of.
You're talking about the antenna things coming out of their back?
What is that?
I don't know. It looks like a radio receiver to me, but with like a red or white LED depending on whether they're being controlled.
I guess maybe like you are currently connected to the brainwashing intercom kind of thing. I don't know. But anyways, you're like I'm not sure where you're trying to go. But you have to like get onto a bus, and then the bus takes you, and then at the end of the bus ride you get off and security catches you and puts you into prison. I think that whole sequence when you have to get off the bus and security busts you is really kind of neat.
It's
actually,
well, technically you don't get off the bus, you get taken off the bus when the police whatever come and stop the bus. Like they get in the way of the bus to stop it.
Police, the big hunky like meat men. Guys. It's like, oh yeah, there's mutants. Because what actually happened is Mutant League Football won and then ran for office. Started the USSR. Anyway, has anybody here played Mutant League Football? Because that's not off topic at all. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about one other thing that was kind of I realized after the fact was a turning point in the game where I stopped enjoying it quite as much.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of the game, they were very good about telling you and pointing you towards the things in the room that were important, like by lighting them up with the yellow lights, or sometimes they were lit up in white, or whatever the case may be. And they often had little like portal style diagrams. It's like, oh, here, you can turn the laser back and forth to move it around, and it was very helpful. It like kind of gave you an idea of what you needed to like look at to try to solve the puzzle in that room. And as you got further and further in the game, there were less indicators of what you needed to interact with in the room, and that's where it got a little bit more frustrating for me. And especially at the very last scene, because in the last scene you come up, you're coming up to this wall and you're going through this crowd of people, and I just walked right through. And I kind of went all the way to the wall thinking that it would trigger a cutscene or something. And I just kind of ran into the wall, and I'm like, am I supposed to jump up? And the wall's like, I don't know, 80 feet high.
It's a giant like wall with a huge like, it's obvious there's like some sort of uprising going on. There's a huge like hammered sickle on the thing. And there's like one of the meat men dudes like up on a tower going at everybody.
Yeah, and so I was like, what did I miss? And so I kind of wandered around for a while, and then I'm like, oh, there's this AT-AT/Walker back that I was supposed to interact with that. And
I did that too.
Honestly, this is a problem that was endemic the entire very end of the game. So sorry, I've been talking for a while, but there's also a portion. There's a portion where after you get captured by the bus, you get injured in your when you try to escape from your jail cell.
This is my favorite portion of the game right here.
This is your favorite.
I really like this whole sequence.
I think the pacing at from everywhere from after you get on the bus to the end of the game is terrible. Because
I do too, but I like it.
So basically you're limping the whole time, and you can press shift to sprint like you can in the rest of the game, but it's just like a slightly faster limp.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just let me make this straight. I don't like it gameplay wise. I think the gameplay in that area is terrible. I like it atmospherically.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating when the last part of the game, you should not be questioning, like, for it to make an impact on you, you want it to be as straightforward as possible. So when I walked past the AT-AT in that very last scene, it just ruined the whole end scene for me.
I did too, but I almost feel like that's intentional. I think you're supposed to like walk up the wall, realize that you can't get past it, and then turn around and go back. But I do agree that they should have done a better job communicating that. Maybe light it up after you walk past it.
And then when you get in it, you just have to go up to the wall and hold W or hold D, whatever, hold right for like a minute to destroy the wall. And it's like,
was I the only one to use a controller?
I used this game.
I used a keyboard,
I used keyboard.
Yeah, the keyboard controls are kind of awkward, but it's like there's no dialogue in the game because all of it's just kind of like, yeah, like the phone talk Russians like wah 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 wah, but it's all with Russian accents basically.
And the big meaty dudes just scream,
spy.
Is it spy?
It sounded like spy, but I'm not sure that's what they said.
I thought that they said destroy. Or die. Basically, yeah. They're all very metal. But the reason I think that end sequence is really interesting atmospherically is because you're in a prison, right? And you have to like swing your like this prison cage cell from like the giant endless pit that you're hanging over because, you know, video games. Then you have to swing it over and you get out and you're limping, which is why you get injured because you kind of impale yourself on like the spike from the side of the thing. And then you limp through, you limp all the way out of this prison. And that includes going through a morgue, which is distressing, like a burning room, which is almost Holocaust-esque. There's like...
Rip me.
What? Oh, there goes his internet. It's funny that he said rip me. He'll be back, hopefully. Could someone screen cap that? Because that's pretty great. But, oh, dear. And then... oh, shit. And then you go through this almost Holocaust-esque room. There's like a huge sequence of coffins, and that whole area I think is quite powerful actually, and very well done. I don't know. While we're talking about our favorite section of the game, do you have anything you want to talk about, Uthris, at all?
Well, I will say my favorite, just in terms of chapters. For me, there's essentially 3 chapters, right? You're in the factory, kind of refinery building. You're outside, and then you're in the prison, escaping that.
Yeah.
For me, the outside's the weakest in terms of storytelling, in atmosphere for me, just because it kind of feels like this, why is this still here kind of thing, where you're outside and you're like, is the place really truly destroyed? Like, why are there people here that aren't slaves? You know, like to me, it feels like there's these areas where you're like, well, why am I a slave over you? You know, like, why are you out here and why was I in there? And it never really answers those questions. And that kind of bugs me. But in terms, story-wise, first segment and third segment's probably the best. And then the middle segment has probably some of the most frustrating of all the puzzles. Like there's 2 there that made me just want to not play anymore, and it took me forever to get through. One being when the guard takes control of your dog, and the cook there, because I had no reference to grab onto anything.
Yeah.
And so I spent, I think, 30 minutes trying to like just barely get in range of the dog and not be seen and get control of the dog, thinking the dog's going to attack the guard. And I spent that whole time in that whole sequence doing the wrong thing without knowing.
Yeah, that puzzle's very poorly described. I think that there's another portion of this game that I want to talk about, which is actually its development, that I kind of would like to see a video on. I would like to see a documentary on how this game got made.
Can I mention my favorite part of the game real quick?
Go ahead, sorry.
Because, when I was thinking about it, and the thing that I actually disliked the most about this game, like the things that made me hate big parts, was the times where there was just too much waiting. Like that outside segment, the very first puzzle is wait for Mr. Star Wars to finally pass. Because if you go too soon, he kills you, right? Like that's the entire thing. You just have to wait. And there's way too many puzzles that are like that, where you're basically just waiting. There's no intelligent downtime. It's just waiting. And I would say my favorite was the time where they really kind of forgot all of that. There was like almost no waiting. And that was the that section that Blind said he really didn't like, where, after you activate those walker things, you hop down and you go through that kind of on rails section for a bit, and then you go through all the underground puzzles. And there were some really interesting puzzles down there. They were all pretty, straightforward for the most part. The atmosphere was good. And other than like the crusher part having a bit of a slow pacing, everything was pretty fast and at your own pace.
Yeah. I like that we keep calling the AT-AT something different.
Yeah.
Mr. Star Wars? What?
Well, you didn't like me calling him at, so
it's fine. You're just one of those. It's not incorrect. It's just
yeah.
That's all I have to say. But yeah, no, like I kind of agree with I think it was Eggman who said this at the beginning, which is it doesn't do a very good job of describing what's going on exactly, but it makes you think enough about the subject matter to be interested in looking something up or doing maybe a little bit more research. Because I did, like after I finished streaming this game, I spent about 20 minutes on Wikipedia reading about the Romanian uprising. This is like a section of history that I'm not super familiar with, especially because it is not super recent, but it's, it's recent enough. It's interesting. I don't know.
So
go ahead.
Speaking of the real life connection in the game to the Romanian uprising, there's a picture at the end that has some people in modern times holding up signs that say #resist with the first S replaced with the Z, so REZIST 2017. So that's the hashtag that a lot of people around that time frame were using. I got very confused though, because some of the top results for me were from the Charleston, Virginia attacks just a few days ago in the United States, where there was white nationalists doing things there, which are, I won't get into it too much, but
not fun. Let's just leave it at that.
White power. They're chanting "White Lives Matter," and for a game called Black the Fall, I was like, is this like a race thing? I got very confused for a moment. And so, but yeah, they're not related. They just happen to be using the same hashtag for some reason.
Yeah.
Speaking of that kind of confusion,
go ahead.
Speaking of that kind of confusion, throughout the game, when there's kind of logos and stuff for the regime, they kind of use the initials POC. And I tried Googling it, and I still don't know what exactly that's supposed to be, because the only thing that came up was person of color. And I was like in a very similar position.
I don't think it was POC. I think it was PCR, right?
Was it PCR?
PCR, which if you spell Russia in Cyrillic, it looks in English like POCC backwards N R, or backwards R. So
that may have been it then.
So it could be an abbreviation for Russia.
Probably.
Where's Cooler?
It's like I couldn't figure it out Googling it, and so I just got really confused.
Where's Cooler when we need him? Yeah, I didn't notice that at all, actually. But it's interesting, the hashtag thing, though, because I looked at the hashtag as well, but I did like a month and a half ago when I played this game, and it was just anniversary of Uprising was what I found. You know, it's just a yearly thing for people in Romania, is what I found. So, kind of not related. Also, can I just say that the name of this game completely confuses me? It just kind of seems completely irrelevant. Like, wouldn't Red the Fall make more sense? I don't know. The name of this game is the weirdest portion of it to me. Like, did you guys find any connection at all? Hi, Cat.
No. And it doesn't even come up anywhere in the game at all either.
Just the title screen.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, one thing I kind of mentioned before, I forgot about Lewis. I kind of mentioned earlier is I wanted to talk about this game's development, because this game was originally kickstarted in 2014, and the original Kickstarter pitch for this game was completely different than what this game turned into. Quite literally, everything from logo to like art style. It had combat originally. Like, I thought we lost Eggman for a second there, but he's just looking up. I thought your internet went out again because like you didn't move for about 10 seconds, but you're just like staring. Okay. What do you guys think of that? Like, if you'd kickstarted that game that they were pitching and ended up with this, what do you think your, like, I'm just putting this question out, what do you think your reaction would be? Because the original pitch was completely different.
Well, I would have to see how they announced it and how they made the change. Like, if the change was over time and they basically talked and gave people the notification required, then I'm okay with it. I'm trying to go through the updates here on their Kickstarter page to see if there's any like major announcements, like, oh, major gameplay changes. But I don't really see anything.
Yeah.
But if they announced it like either on their own forums or somewhere else where the backers are easily notified, I'm fine with it. And it doesn't look like it reflects poorly on Steam because it has mostly positive reviews.
Which is fitting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess we're so far removed in time now from when they had the Kickstarter, which was what, 2013, 2014, that I'd have to literally ask my previous self, because what was I in 2014? I was in my junior year of college, and like I had a different opinion of Kickstarter. Nowadays, I don't kickstart things just because, I don't know, if it's a good product, I'll just buy it. But if I were to kickstart something, I'm not really expecting anything back. Yeah. It's too volatile to expect some sorts of things, and you should, but just with the way that the high profile failures have gone on there, you're putting that money into the void, and if you get something back, then great. So that's how I would view it nowadays.
Yeah.
Looking at the Kickstarter, if you'd asked, if I had backed this and I got what I did, would I have been happy? I would probably say no. But the thing is, I don't think I would have ever backed it in the first place because it's advertising a game I kind of really don't like. In my opinion, they made a good change. Was it a change that the backers would have liked? Probably not, but it's a change that I liked.
See, I think that if I'd backed this game originally, because the original pitch for the game was they're like, well, it's almost looked like a Metroidvania, like, kind of Deus Ex. You talk with factions in the game. There was resource gathering of some sort. There was weapons. There was like
permanent effects.
Yeah,
how changes the world.
It seemed kind of sandboxy. Like, it was an ambitious thing originally. Not that this game isn't ambitious. Like, 2.5D games aren't easy to make. I mean, Inside took 6 years, but like the game that they were making and then the game that they made is completely different. Like, it looks like they made a different. They just went back and made a different game with a similar character model. The one thing that I will say though is they stuck to their subject matter, because the original pitch was like, oh, it's a post-industry, maybe even post-apocalypse alternate history USSR controlled Romania. And that is a very specific storyline, unless you just want to use the route of, oh, this is actually just the Wolfenstein universe. But I think because they stuck to their subject matter, if you're backing that subject matter and you just want a game that talks about that, they definitely did that. So, although, yeah. I really want to know what happened in development of this game. I think that's interesting.
One thing we were talking about Playdead's games, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, in terms of the context of this game, and looking at the Kickstarter, visually, it does at least seem to be somewhat inspired by Limbo. Just kind of looking at the aesthetic, the dark aesthetic, kind of the way a lot of the puzzles were set up. It looked a lot like, that one. And then, of course, Inside came out, and that one took the same sort of core idea, but made it more interesting. And it almost seems like the changes were made in parallel, because the changes made Black the Fall feel a lot more like Inside.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, I doubt it's a coincidence, because there's actually one puzzle that I swear is taken straight from Limbo.
Which one?
In the underground section, there's a trick with the lighting. So there's a couple of jumps you need to do. It's the part where there's kind of the fire that shoots across and you have to run back. But when you're running forward, there's one jump where they have it lit and the hole is dark. So you have kind of a bright spot, and you have to jump over that. But then the exact next spot, they have the platforms in shadow with a light from below. So it's dark, light, dark, and you have to make that jump. And it seemed very similar to me to that puzzle in Limbo, where you have the button that had the crusher on top of it. And if you step on the button part, the crusher goes down. But the next one, if you step on the ridge between that button, it goes down. It felt like the same sort of trick, where you have to realize that you need to like flip those two because they're different.
Oh, interesting.
I remember you not being a big fan of that puzzle, so I can see why you didn't like it. I died there once.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I didn't get the connection. I thought you were comparing it to the boulder puzzle in Limbo. But
no.
You're running up and then oh, look, a boulder. Oh god, I gotta run. That's the one I thought you were comparing it to, so I was confused. But no, that I can see the connection there. It's definitely they wear their inspiration on their sleeve. Like you can tell what inspired this game. I almost wish that they went a little bit more of their own way with it. I think that's kind of what made me lean towards, if someone asked me, they're like, oh, I want a good 2D platformer, I'd be like, okay, have you played Inside? And if they're like, no, I'd be like, play Inside. Maybe if they've already played Inside, I'd be like, oh, this one's sort of like that, but not quite as good, like, this is also an option, unless you're really interested in the subject matter, in which case, then there's your political commentary game. But
if anyone remembers what my conclusion was from the episode where we talked about both Inside and Limbo, you may remember that I liked Inside, but I just found Limbo too frustrating to really like it.
Limbo's a harder game.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue I had with this game. Like, there's a very fine line between being challenging and being frustrating. And unfortunately, this game is just too far on the frustrating side for me to really have said I enjoyed it. It's a lot like Empathy in the fact that I want to say I like it, but I just can't.
Yeah. It feels like we're up right now, so just go ahead.
I can say that I like the game. And I think that's why I feel like it's an average game, is because they didn't offer anything new to it. Looking at the Kickstarter, like if they implemented some of those features, like maybe not necessarily the combat, but like the additional areas they were talking about and some of the different types of puzzles that they showed just down below and some of the different creatures that they had, I feel like that would have been better than the 2 generic enemies that we basically faced the whole time and the turrets.
Yeah. I thought the mech was pretty cool.
The mech was more frustrating than anything, probably.
I
thought that was the coolest enemy too, but
I mean, all of the enemies were just kind of frustrating. Like, because there's no way that you can fight back against them. It's like, okay, I just need to wait until the animation plays out so I can figure out how to get past them, type thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you have any closing thoughts, Thyeggman?
nope. I really don't for this one.
That's fair. I'll tell you this. I think it had its intended effect on me, which was I'm gonna go read about history now for a little bit. I think my thoughts are pretty clear. The game's all right. It definitely is a unique setting, which is appealing to me, and I like that. It has interesting themes going on, which I think is cool. I like seeing developers trying to tackle, as I mentioned earlier, interesting topics, and this is definitely an interesting topic. I kind of want to know what the game would have been the way they originally envisioned it, but more in a scientific sense than a actual, like, logical sense. Like, maybe that game was terrible. Maybe that game was just way too ambitious and there's no way in hell they could have ever made it, because if their team never got bigger, the Kickstarter shows 4 people in their dev team. So it's a pretty small team. And, you know, even Playdead's 30 people. So, like, it's a small game for sure. Even with the backing of Square, like, it's a small game. So that's cool. The credits are a little bit longer, but that's mostly like contractors and other people. Would I recommend it? Maybe. I don't know. Did I actually enjoy playing it? I think, to me, my enjoyment of the game was dragged down due to the controls. I found the platforming controls a little fucky, and the reason for that is when you jump, it doesn't... If you're tilting... At least this was the way it was on the controller. If you're tilting the stick even slightly to the left or right, he'll just, like, jump like a meter forward. Like, I felt like I had very little control over the jumping, and that felt really bad, and that kind of just impeded my enjoyment of the entire game.
Yeah, there's an animation for jumping onto platforms, which is so different from the normal jump animation. It feels a bit strange, particularly when you think you're going to jump up and you don't.
Yeah, I'm going to just say this as well. Like, I think that that's almost made worse by Inside,
Yeah.
which controls perfectly. Like,
Well, I have to wonder if that's because you two use controllers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think me and Eggman use keyboard. Like, for me, the controlling the distance of the jump was really easy with keyboard because you just let go.
Interesting.
And you just basically land where you wanted to land. So
Yeah.
I wonder if that joystick kept you going farther than the keyboard did.
Interesting.
Yeah, I
don't
really
know.
didn't have any problems with the keyboard once I got used to it.
You know, it's possible, but when you say full controller support, I expect the controls to be at least as good as the keyboard mouse controls. Like, I mean, to a certain extent. Like, I'm not going to expect, you know, an FPS shooter to have the exact same precision as with the mouse, but, you know, at least make the controls work, you know, not have weird, obscure kind of edge cases like that.
I mean, for me, there are 2 genres of games that I prefer controllers, and that's this style of platformer specifically, the kind of 2.5D kind of physics, not like platformy heavy, but like kind of platforming light games. I really like that style of platformer, and I like to play them with controllers. You know, it's just every platform, like everything from Oddworld to Inside to, I don't know, I've played a few now, so like, it's just this style of game that it is, so I prefer controller. And this is probably one of the worst controlling ones. At least that jumping, like the locked animation thing, is just messed up. I'm not a fan. So, did you want to say something, Eggman? Or are you just doing something with your hands? Okay, well, I think we're pretty much wrapped up here. Does anybody have any final thoughts at all? Anything you want to say?
I think we already covered that.
We're good? Cool. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. I don't want to cut anybody off. Yeah, I think that's it. You know, we're just over an hour. Like an hour and one... Well, just it's going to be under an hour once I cut the intro out. But yeah, this is definitely a simpler one. Not the shortest one we've ever done, but it was fun. This was fun. You guys all have fun?
Yeah.
Awkward silence. Okay.
It was fun. There's not a ton to talk about.
Yeah.
It's a really short game too. Like if I were to play it a second time, I could probably beat it in an hour.
Yeah, I know Mott did a walkthrough video, which is like 45 minutes. It's like 48 minutes or something.
I mean, when I played it the second time, it took me about an hour and a half to get through, but the first time it took me about three and a half, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, even Limbo's like that. Like, I think like there's videos of Limbo that are like an hour-ish.
It's not short for the games we talk about in the show. We've talked about short games, and this was not one of them.
Yeah.
And I will say this as my final little point is the price point compared to the gameplay length and the replayability, I think is a little off. I think if it was a little bit cheaper, I'd be probably a little bit happier with the purchase. But I'm looking at Limbo; it's $10 now. Inside is a little bit more expensive, and the way you guys are talking about it, it's just better.
Yeah.
So like it just feels like, you know, maybe if it was just a $10 game instead of 15, maybe a better price point.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm a little jaded on price point, and the reason I say that is like I will spend $30 on a 3-hour game if it's good enough. So, like, price to me is kind of almost irrelevant, I think. Like, that's more...
Well, for me, it has to be attached with replayability. Like, if it's a 3-hour game that you can play 3 times, or maybe like once a year if you really liked it, you know, you're getting your money's worth. But to me, I won't play this again, probably.
No, I mean, me neither, but I look at it this way. How much do you pay to go to the movies?
I don't go to the movies.
Okay, well, if you were to go to the movies, how much would you pay? Like $15?
Yeah, $20.
Yeah, $20 after popcorn, right? So it's like $20 for an hour and a half long film, or $16 for a 3-hour game. That's the way I see it. But anyways, I think the game's all right. It's interesting, and this was fun. So I guess we're just gonna call it here. Wrap up. Duns. This is the portion of the show where I'm gonna let Uthris shout himself out again. So if you have anything you want to point people in the direction of, do that now.
Yeah, sure. So you guys can follow me on Twitter, Twitter/Uthris. You can also follow me and find my YouTube channel on YouTube, YouTube/Uthris. Very consistent naming, I think, across the board there. And I do creative building games. So if you want to check that out, go ahead.
He does good stuff. And Lewis or Eggman, do either of you guys want to shout anything out? I mean, you can find Eggman in my chat pretty frequently, and Lewis wants to stream eventually.
For those of you who play OpenRCT, I did implement a feature that I have sitting on my computer right now that allows you to. It's a different type of scenario objective where your goal is to not get a number of guests, but to expand your park and buy land. So
interesting.
I thought that was interesting. But I haven't merged it yet because there's still some bugs, and I need to make sure it's okay with the creators since it does add. Well, I mean, doesn't change the base game because it's only going to be in custom scenarios that you can do this. So I had fun with it.
Cool. And Lewis, do you want to talk about anything? Life updates?
Nothing too terribly. I mean, other than I still want to try to speedrun a bunch of games, and whenever I finally get around to doing that, Twitch.tv/LRFLEW.
Oh wait, it didn't go away.
What?
I thought my internet died.
Okay.
Very last
We got to show you that clip of you earlier. It's pretty great.
I have not opened it up yet, but I want to watch it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll just wrap up here. My name's Greg. The internet calls me blind. I stream a lot of management games. You should check out the other episodes of this show. They're all on my YouTube channel. Also on SoundCloud, which is... does that site still exist? I think it does.
It has a new CEO and new investors.
Okay, cool. Then it's fine. Great. I was starting to wonder if I was gonna get my money back. But yeah, so SoundCloud's cool. You can go find it over there. Also, I tweet out the RSS feed every now and again, and we're up on Google Play, but iTunes keeps rejecting us for some unexplainable reason. So, sad face. So that's that. Check out the other episodes of the show. Follow our Steam curator, and we're gonna go into After Hours now. So if you're listening to the recorded version, you're out of luck. But for those of you watching live, we're just gonna hop over to Twitch IRL and bullshit for an hour or so. Thanks for watching. This has been Story Mode. Bye, everybody.
I'm waving. You just can't see it.
Well,